Hello team, welcome back to another Line War cast. This is your map today. This is the lower bracket final, or the tournament semi-final, however you want to look at it. The winner of this game goes on to play AKA Misk in the grand final of the tournament. Our two players in the semi-final, Tomahawk in blue, and someone said that my nickname sucks, in red. In the picking phase here, we can see that neither player really picked where the other one was going to go. So Tomahawk's going on the right-hand side. Nickname's going on the left-hand side here. This landmass is actually connected. It's not really a split map, like two-island situation. But still a lot of chokes. Probably going to see some Navy come into play at some point in the game. And let's get into it. Tomahawk's going for an airport and a town. Right off the bat is the two pre-constructed buildings, and then two barracks and a factory in the south. And Nickname's got 3 factory tank going, with a refinery already on the way. The tanks are going to be pretty decent in that it's a wide open field in order to get to where Tomahawk is building. But the helicopters are going to be huge for blue to defend any aggression from the red tanks. And we'd expect that Tomahawk will get a little bit of an eco lead because of this quick town. Nickname is going to even that out by going for a town of their own on the bottom left side here. It has a port as well. And otherwise, it's going to be a slow build-up in this game. First 3 tanks are nearly done for Nickname. We'll see what they decide to do. The capping line here is the tanks. So right now it looks like Nickname is content just capping these territories and then moving through this choke over time. It's 3 more tanks from Nickname, and the first helicopter is nearly done for Tomahawk, who goes for a second factory at this location. Whoever can control this choke is probably going to be in a real good spot in this game. And it's going to be 3 factories pouring units for Nickname into this part of the map, and then 2 factories, 2 barracks potentially for Tomahawk. Right now these barracks are just capping to the south, but can easily divert everything towards Nickname once blue realizes where red is, and vice versa. Tomahawk's got a farm on the way. We can check the ecos. 405 for blue, 360 for red, who nearly has this town completed. The crane is still going. And this is Nickname's vision. So relatively quickly, these tanks are going to see that there's blue territory getting capped here. And both players will know where the other one is, or rather the direction in which the other player is going to be coming from. We heard a dock for Nickname up in this northern part of the water. The boats might be able to get to this left-hand side, or maybe not. I'm not really sure. It's kind of hard to tell sometimes if that's a traversable path. But certainly Nickname can use this dock to stop any potential trade route that Tomahawk sets up if that happens. Tanks duck down into this mountain and forest with 3 more on the way. 2 helicopters done for blue, and a 3rd helicopter about to complete. And tanks now out of this factory for Tomahawk. And we can take a zoom out and see the energy situation. There are 3 refineries or energy wells relatively close to Tomahawk. 2, sort of 3 for Nickname, with this very safe 4th one on that back island. So energy shouldn't necessarily be a big problem for either player. Tomahawk's going for the first refinery at this point. This was a pre-picked territory from blue. That's why that water territory is already owned without having a dock. And this refinery certainly Nickname's docks and boats would be able to... I mean, obviously the boats would be able to hit this thing by going up around the north, but the helicopters for Tomahawk should be able to defend it fairly easily. Unless there's a ton of boats that Nickname throws at this. And it's still more tanks for red. 9 tanks total on the field at the moment, with 3 more on the way, and a barracks being built in this bottom forest. And now this is the vision for Nickname. I'm not sure if they see Tomahawk. And vice versa, really. I mean, tanks have such poor vision that here they are, pretty much hitting each other. And now both players see what's up. Nickname has the tank advantage. We'll see how quickly these helicopters for Blue get sent off the airport, and the answer is pretty much right away. And there's still an opportunity for these three tanks in the south from Nickname to do a lot of damage. In that, I don't think that Tomahawk sees this. The tanks are going to be stealth because they're in the forest at the moment. I mean, this is Tomahawk's vision, so it's kind of... I mean, the tanks are showing up, but it doesn't guarantee that Blue is actually going to see these tanks. And they may be able to get around and get on top of some of these producers. 4 tanks dig in at this choke. It'll be difficult for Tomahawk to get through this. The helicopters could start working on this defensive line, but we expect and we do see a SAM transition from Nickname out of the 3 factories. So by the time the Blue helicopters were to get close to Red, they probably will be met with enough SAMs that it's a little bit scary to take the fight. Both players have their first refinery up at this point. The Blue tanks are going to try to get through this, but decide that it's a bad idea, and dip. And although tanks are great at breaking through defensive lines, they're not as great breaking through defensive lines that already have dug-in tanks in them. And another aggressive factory for Tomahawk here, which will be huge in pushing more units through this choke when they decide to actually try to go for it. Nickname's got these 3 tanks around the back, but the question remains, what is Nickname going to do with these tanks once they unfortunately realize that there is no refinery here? Which should tip Nickname off that this water refinery has been taken. I mean, Nickname has already seen that there's helicopters on the field. So there has to be, and there's tanks for Blue, so there has to be an energy source somewhere. And the 2 tanks are going to try to get to this town. They're likely not going to be able to because these 2 helicopters at home will make sure that this gets defended. And an interceptor now for Tomahawk as the form of anti-air. So 1 tank for Nickname is going to get to the top right and probably be able to start capping this. There might be a chance for Nickname to go for a proxy barracks there. This first proxy barracks, if we want to call it that, has produced 2 commandos and continues to produce commandos at this point. And 3 helicopters take out that tank. First cruiser is now done for Nickname, and a destroyer is the follow-up. They've already got to this northern island. There is actually a trade route right here that could be set up relatively quickly for Red. And 637 income for Nickname and 747 for Tomahawk. Who's having a little bit of problems with the energy situation. And so we'll look to cap this second refinery as quick as possible. There's actually submarine pen now in the north for Blue, which can also cap this refinery, that oil well, pardon me. But here comes Nickname's boats. The plan is to send them around the north. There's a destroyer with this, so any subs that show up will be detected. And a little bit of a push with all these tanks. It'll be interesting to see. Nickname has 2 refineries, but moving all these tanks and these, what's going to be 3 boats, is a lot of energy that's required to do so. So there's probably going to have to be a 3rd refinery at some point for Red, who's putting down an airport and transitioning into artillery with some eco behind it. Great call from Tomahawk to send the 2 tanks up to the north to make sure that Nickname doesn't actually get a cheeky little top right proxy base. And here come the commandos for Nickname. There's 4 of them right now. They'll be super invisible. for Tomac. This infantry it isn't enough to spot these 4 commandos who are concealed in the mountain. And by this point, Tomac's capped the whole bottom right of the map. Has some artillery pieces and some SAMs on the way. And the barracks in the top right for Blue, who finally cleans up that tank. When I say finally, I mean that's about as quick as you could reasonably expect a tank like that to get cleaned up. And this is kind of your map. A little bit of a split map going on. Obviously, Nickname's got this foothold. And we can check the economies. 847 for Tomahawk, still running on 1 refinery, and 761 for Nickname. With obviously 2 refineries sitting at 60 out of 68 total energy. The subpen will likely get scouted if these boats for Nickname decide to go into this little bay a little bit further, and there will be 1 sub for Tomahawk by the time that happens. And Tomahawk's got a 2nd refinery now on the way, with 2 interceptors sitting on the airport, and a 6th helicopter on the way. These 4 commandos are venturing pretty deep into Tomahawk's base now. Very slowly they will get revealed just because there are a number of units here, and the buildings also add to the detection of stealth units. So 1 commando now visible, 2nd one's kind of popping in and out of view. And still a very... I mean, there's no real way that either player is going to be able to push super hard through this center part of the map without taking a bunch of losses. Nickname does good to have 1 tank on this barracks. It probably will destroy that barracks before it's taken out. And interceptors for Tomahawk are also going to be able to detect these commandos very well. So the sub is out. Nickname's going for economy on this northern island, maybe beginning to set up this trade route, getting that first town. And this is Nickname's vision, so the sub pen is in view. It's going to be best case for Tomahawk, 2 subs against a destroyer and a cruiser. But these helicopters, there's no missile boats with this Red Navy, so these 4 helicopters at home can be used to help this. Perfect timing for the 2nd sub to show up, and I don't even know who wins. And now that it's a 2v1 again, I suppose Red wins. But if it was just 2 subs against a cruiser and a destroyer, I think it becomes less clear what wins that fight. Especially with a little bit of micro. But this is a lot of economy for Red to be going for with those farms in the northern island. So we can check the ecos. 843 for Red. 993 for Blue. Who has capped a lot of this map. All this infantry is now starting to get back, like sent back to the front after it's done capping in the bottom right. And there's a decent amount of industry for Tomahawk as well, who is going for a little bit of a push here. It's a very difficult choke to get through, obviously. 2 lines of artillery, handful of helicopters. And Nickname can also use these boats to pull up to this choke and help out with the fight if Blue decides to push super hard. Dock in the north for Tomahawk, which is probably wise given that water control is going to become more of a thing the longer the game goes on. And we're about to see some famous Nickname commando drops with the transport plane on the way. And this is actually Nickname's first barracks close to their base. This one in the south is still up. Nickname's digging in commandos. There's actually a 2nd one behind. But Blue is sending a large army now to the south. If Nickname thinks that too much of this Blue army has been committed to the south here, there is an opportunity for this army to push out and put some pressure on it. I think that's exactly what's going to happen. This is a really cool play. There's 2 SAMs in this transport boat. It's getting body blocked by its own cruiser. But if those two SAMs landed, they would just be doing immediate damage to all these airplanes and helicopters. Because one of the most dangerous positions you can put your SAMs in is right underneath your opponent's airport, for obvious reasons. Does the cruiser get the refinery? Is a big question. Tomahawk's already working on their third refinery, even if this one does get taken out, which it likely won't with 4 helicopters, and it doesn't. But the airport is super close to the land, so this one cruiser, at the very least, is going to heavily damage this airport. It might be able to destroy it. If the airport's destroyed, then Tomahawk only loses 2 interceptors. Luckily, by building helicopters, the helicopters don't need to be sitting on the airport, of course. So if the airport dies, the helicopters don't explode like a normal plane would. In the sense that if a plane doesn't have anywhere to land in land war, it just blows up at the end of its flight. Relatively scary push from Nickname. But Tomahawk's now sending everything back towards the front. There's definitely enough units and infantry here that they're going to be able to clear both of these barracks. And the cruiser doesn't get the airport even though it's heavily damaged. And all of a sudden, Tomahawk's getting a little bit of stability in the north. And by having submarines here, it is a choke in this northern part of the map, so Tomahawk will be able to recognize really quickly if Nickname's trying to go for another naval push. It is a ton of artillery pieces. It's a full dot of SAMs for Nickname along with it. But here come a ton of helicopters for Tomahawk. They've been transferred over to this side of the landmass, so they'll land on this part of the map after this attack, which will allow them to get back in the fight quicker, since they'll be closer. And when they hover over these artillery pieces, you can just see how quickly they shred them. And only 2 helicopters are going to go down, maybe 3, because this one decides to land right here. Ill-advised, but of course Tomahawk has no control over that. And 4 submarines and a cruiser in the north for Tomahawk. First transport plane is done for Nickname. There's some commandos that are pooling up. And then 2 barracks in the north as well for Nickname, who's got the first port on the way. And it's interesting to see where the eco's at. 1123 for blue, 1093 for red, so relatively close. Nickname's gonna back up to this choke again. And this cruiser's caught out a little bit. 4 helicopters might be able to destroy it. Clearly the barracks on the bottom is in trouble, and Nickname's got a town on the bottom left side of the map. Cruiser goes down. Second airport was made for Tomahawk. And it is going for bombers. This barracks is being destroyed to save some upkeep cost for Tomahawk. I mean, this part of the map is relatively safe, especially because Nickname's proxy base here was taken out. And we might even see a rocket that's built by either player just because of this choke. Because if either player, when they just decide to dig in like this, it's very strong. There's a chance that Nickname could punch through with tanks, but really just a bunch of tanks is the only real way either player is going to be able to bust through the defensive positions, or of course by using a rocket. Docks 2 and 3 have been built by Nickname. A little bit of a sub-skirmish with a cruiser against this Red Navy. And these 5 helicopters get some great shots off before the SAMs show up. 1 helicopter will go down. And Nickname's still with a healthy number of tanks, so it's not like Blue's going to be able to just push through this choke. And now Nickname has 3 helicopters in the north working on these subs and cruisers. Nickname's about to set up this trade route. The port is on the way, the connecting port, to get those merchant ships out. And these second and third docks will really help Nickname to be able to secure that trade route. Because of course, if Nickname loses a Navy battle, then Tomac can just roll up with ships and destroy both the ports or the towns. It will be no good for Nickname. Blue certainly has the unit advantage here. Red has the tank advantage at the moment. The tanks will be very strong in a situation like this. There's like just enough artillery here for Red to be able to destroy that blue infantry. And here comes a big moment in the game, the Navy fight, for the aforementioned reasons about players keeping their trade routes safe. It's a lot of destroyers here, which aren't going to be super good against the helicopters. The SAMs are going to race back to the shoreline. Probably should keep this fight in view as well, because the tank count for Red is actually thinning. And this could definitely turn on Nickname relatively quick if this blue army wins a decisive fight. Huge play from Nickname to drop immediately on this town. The 4 interceptors are heading home, so they're not able to shoot down these planes. So great timing from Red on when to launch that transport ship, or those transport planes, both of them. And it's now just 2 destroyers against one cruiser. The cruiser should be able to win this fight. And now all of a sudden Nickname needs to dig in, kind of behind this choke a little bit. 2 bombers are done for Tomac, and the trade route is complete for Red. So that'll be huge for Nickname's economy as long as they can stabilize right now and hold off this aggression. Airport sniped. Great play. Nickname's going to send 3 commandos up to the right, and then maybe even just drop some more commandos on this town. It'd be huge if Nickname could destroy that town. 2 more factories for Red as well. Probably in anticipation of potentially losing this fight in the choke. It's probably not a super comfortable position that Nickname is in, especially on this frontal fight. And rocket now from Tomac in this forest, definitely within range of all of this. But Tomac might just be able to force their way through with all these units. The 4 commandos are the wild cards for Nickname, because we've seen before how Nickname can make magic happen with the commandos. 1283 income for Red, 1281 for Blue, so super close. And I still think there's that Nickname's income was going to go up a little bit more once these merchant ships get to port and unload all their money. Factory 2 barracks in the north for Tomac, who sees that this is actually a drop that's going on. Wonderfully for Blue, there's going to be a submarine and a cruiser that's going to be able to cut that off. But Nickname's definitely stabilized on the naval fight, but just in time for the bombers from Blue to start getting into play. And it's a little bit scary. It is quite a blob from Tomac. It'll be difficult to stop. There's no rocket on the way for Nickname as of yet. Launchpad is finished for Blue. Once they have 500 money, a rocket will be made. There's another dock somewhere for Tomac that we just heard, rather a submarine pen, and it's right here. Cruiser's doing the best it can, but there's a lot of artillery for Blue, so this Blue artillery is going to do quite well against all these Red boats, especially with the help of the planes. And where are these commandos? They're going for the refinery. Great garrison of infantry for Tomac here. The commandos are going to jump on these buildings before they're actually completed. We see Nickname targeting that factory, which is great for Red. Obviously, this is horrible for Red. And now it's very difficult to contain this, because there's no real natural place for Nickname to group up that protects this airport. And even just with all these factories, it's still so difficult to deal with a blob of this size. Commandos get out, the transport plane's not as lucky. greeting party of these blue infantry. These commandos are doing decent, but they will get cleaned up with the help of the bombers. And now the front that Nickname's going to have to fight on gets a little bit wider now that Tomahawk's through this choke. There's only 2 SAMs with this push, and there is 1 helicopter for Nickname. But 1 helicopter isn't going to be able to destroy this quick enough. And great play from Blue to destroy this dock. Nickname's putting down 2 more docks. Naval control is so important with the setup that's going on, and Nickname's in a very tough spot because they can't give up on the fight in the water because of the trade route and the need to secure that. And obviously the threat from Blue's Navy, which is a real thing. 2 subs and a cruiser, that demands some respect. But then at the same time, Red needs the balance, not just losing on the land. And that's what's really tough. I mean, there's a decent number of artillery here for Nickname now. But clearly much more for Blue. Nickname does get this refinery. That's a huge play. And there's just these 2 commandos that are going to go off to the top right. Tomahawk's got 1 infantry there. Won't be able to see the commandos if they decide to try to start building a proxy base. And rocket on the way now for Blue. It's 1/3 of the way done. And a good old Navy fight. A cruiser and a missile boat against a cruiser and 2 subs with another cruiser for Blue. So I think that Tomahawk's actually going to be able to destroy this port over time. These docks are now completed, but they're not going to be able to produce enough boats to defend this in time. And unless the commandos on land can defend the port, but with micro, Blue doesn't even need to get close to the shore, and that's exactly what happens. Even artillery here, I think only artillery on this bank, maybe here as well, would be able to reach these subs and cruisers. So it's going to be 5 factories in the south, all going for artillery. We can check the eco now that this trade route's been taken out. 1331 for Blue and 1341 for Red still. Nickname's got a submarine that gets around this cruiser because of the sub pen in the north. Another transport boat is showing up to take some of these commandos off that island. And we can check where Nickname's commandos are. They're just capping this in the top right. And cruisers out of these docks for Nickname. So Nickname's cruisers could come here and start helping out against this army. The concave for Nickname is relatively decent through the mountains. And this is red-controlled territory, so all these blue units will move even slower through the mountains than Nickname's units. But it's still so much. And there's no helicopters or air units for Nickname at this point. 4 submarines, 3 cruisers with a 5th submarine showing up is going to put these docks for Nickname directly in at risk. And here comes the rocket. Submarine waiting for its chance to jump at that refinery. The best thing that could happen for Nickname right now, pardon me, is that this rocket accidentally friendly fires a large portion of Blue's army. But Tomahawk puts it in pretty much the best location possible. Loses like a handful of infantry here. And if there's any chance that Nickname was going to be able to hold this back, I think at this point, that's not possible. Tomahawk's out of energy, and Nickname's going to make it worse by sending in the sub at the perfect time. And actually building a sub pen right here. Can Tomahawk even see this? Tomahawk can't see this. Even though it doesn't look like the fog of war is in it. Or rather, like, as if, like, it's not in the fog of war, it's within Tomahawk's vision, but that's that stealth bonus of the submarine pen. So very cheeky from Nickname, but would be super sweet if this is pulled off. And now Nickname's in that classic unfortunate situation of being in that there will need to be SAMs to defend against these bombers. But Nickname can't really afford to be building SAMs right now because it all needs to be artillery to be able to have any shot to take on this blue army. That is certainly crushing through this northern mountain. But maybe there's a chance for Nickname to mass up a bunch of units here and push through the southern mountain. But it's going to be very difficult because now the second port's going to go down. The town might also go down as well. Nickname's dropped off some commandos. Great defense from blue. And Tomahawk still doesn't see this sub-pen. Once these 4 infantry get closer, it should be detected. And this is a very strong push from Tomahawk, who continues to send in units to reinforce. 5 submarines and a cruiser for blue here. And this is Nickname's vision. 2 helicopters, unfortunately not enough to actually show all these units. Once the destroyer pops, it will see the submarines, but then the submarines are going to destroy that destroyer. Jeez, what a sentence. Super quickly. And this really cements the fact that blue has full Navy control at this point. Save this submarine pen, which is now scouted by these infantry. There's 3 submarines for Nickname, though, that are going to be able to destroy this blue dock and also that blue refinery. And 1 commando trying its best, about to run in front of 6 infantry. And eco-wise, 1308 for blue, or pardon me, for red, and 1416 for blue. Tomahawk's out of energy. Nickname's building another airport. There's such a low number of SAMs here that if Nickname magically had like 8 helicopters, I mean, that's obviously not how line war works, but if you had 8 helicopters in this situation, they would actually be able to destroy an army like this. Maybe not before the refinery died, but before it does too much damage. But that's not the situation we're in. Nickname's gathering some artillery here close to the buildings. There's 3 SAMs that have been created to deal with this next round of bombers. And more drops from Nickname, who will get this refinery again. And slowly working on this dock. Or, I mean, I'm not really sure why they're not shooting. Maybe they're just out of range. But without a proxy base anywhere on the map, this is a extremely tough situation for Nickname to get back. 7 subs now for Tomahawk on the left-hand side of the map. And this blue army is on this new airport. There's a small chance that Nickname could win this fight from these southern producers. There were, there's like 5 factories here. There's now 3 left. 2 more barracks in the back for Nickname. And a city. And a dock in the south, maybe allowing Nickname to go across here and open up a new front. But otherwise, we probably would expect to see that Nickname's economy is falling even further behind that of Tomahawk, who's rebuilding this refinery again. Actually has some power plants here, which highlights how effective Nickname's been at destroying those energy sources over and over. And income-wise, 1426 for blue and 1374 for red. I mean, Nickname is still crushing the eco. The city and the constant development of all these industries. But still a very strong push from blue. Nickname's now entirely out of energy, so none of these transport boats are going to be able to move. The subs for blue are going to clean them up. And this infantry for Tomahawk is going to destroy those commandos. Nickname does get a farm over here on the right-hand side, with this one hero commando that is just exhausted from carrying the team. Submarines for Tomahawk working on this port again. And Nickname is certainly desperate for energy, rebuilding this refinery. And this is your map if we take a zoom out. A lot of blue. Relatively self-sustaining army here with just one SAM. There's no planes for Nickname. I mean, the helicopters, what's left of them, and the interceptors are on this northern island. And now Tomahawk's starting to send across infantry, protected by these subs. And there's no safe refineries for Nickname anymore, except for this one in the south. Another rocket now for Tomahawk. Oh, it's going to the north. This is probably going to get the town. Certainly we'll get the power plants. And Tomahawk will likely rebuild another rocket to just rinse and repeat that strategy. But this was a great game. Well played to both. That's top tier high level line war, folks. And so congratulations to both for getting this far in the tournament to the semifinals. Tomahawk goes on to play AK Misk in the grand final. I'm not sure when that'll be uploaded or casted, but very excited for it. I hope you enjoyed the replay and the video. Check out the Line War Discord if you'd like to learn more about the game, chat with folks. Hope you have a wonderful night, day, evening, breakfast, lunch, dinner, whatever it is, wherever you are. We'll see you around. Peace.